Hey everyone, today is Friday, January 3rd, so we're just a couple of days into this year's Pantry challenge. And I was a little off schedule, so to speak, on my meal prepping because of traveling and then the New Year's holiday and whatnot. So I am going to get into meal prepping for the coming week, and I'm going to go at it through my bits and bites bins. That happens to be a really popular series on my channel. Thank you all for watching. And I thought I'd just go into that system in a little bit of detail on the front end for anyone who is new to the channel. And thank you all for the new subs and for everyone that's a repeat visitor. You guys are awesome. And I really enjoy having these bits and bites bins for several reasons. And give you an idea of how to go at it if you like this idea for your side-by-side freezer. Now you could do this in a deep freezer as well. I am down to a family of one, an empty nester. So these bits and bites bins are really helpful to me. If you have a really large family that you're cooking for, you may not need to have a bits and bites bin, but I think it's a good idea no matter how many people you're cooking for. You're saving a little bit of this and a little bite of that, and you're going to do something with it down the road. Then we'll get into actually planning from those bits and bites bins here at the latter part of the video. So here are the really good reasons to practice using a bits and bites bin. First, obviously, it helps prevent food waste. And I know a lot of us tend to just kind of throw out that last little bit that's left in the pan, but you might want to reconsider that, because reason number two, having your bits and bites bin full of things, especially pre-cooked meats, really speeds up meal prepping or making snacks or on the fly for unexpected company. You'd be surprised how handy it is to be able to pull those bins out and whip something up. It's actually kind of impressive to the people you're cooking that stuff for too. Now let's call that 2B. And reason number three, having a bin to collect those smaller packages in really takes the frustration out of dealing with your freezer, especially if you have a side-by-side like me. Pull a big package of meat out, all those little things go falling, right? Depending on your freezer, they may fall out every time you open that door. So get a bin. So those are three good reasons. Now, January seems to be all the stores roll out organization products, whether it's bins or stuff to put away your Christmas gear, etc. The prices are relatively good and the selection is really good this time of year. So if you're thinking about getting some bins for your freezer, now's the time. Of course, I always recommend checking Aldi first. Last week and then again this upcoming week, they've got a couple of those clear acrylic bins, which is where I got most of mine that are in the freezer. And you know, Aldi's usually just slightly cheaper than Walmart and slightly better quality in my opinion. But I'll put up here prices and comparison of what's available right now, so y'all can have a look-see. But now let's take a look in my freezer and I'll show you how I'm using this. I'll give you the measurements for my freezer shelves, the measurements of my bins and where I got them, so that if you want to up your freezer game, you'll have a little head start. Let's have a quick look-see in the side-by-side. Here's what I'm talking about, my bits and bites bins. I used this one to pull out some things prior to leaving for the holiday that I had planned to meal prep, which came out of my bits and bites bin. And then I couldn't get through it all because I had parties and whatnot that I had been going to. And then this bin is fruit mostly. And this bin is snacky stuff, mac and cheese bites, egg rolls, yada. And this bin is bags of frozen veggies, mostly whole bags. I might have one or two partially used bags tucked in there. And this bin is full of things like sauces, gravy, apple cider that I cooked down, which again can make for very quick pulling meals together and snacks when you have a yummy sauce to go with it that you don't have to mess with making. This bin is my meats bits and bites bin. So this is full of anything that's an open package. It may or may not be cooked. I've got a few larger things tucked along here, and I'm going to show you why. Because we're talking about the logistics of potentially filling your side-by-side with bins like this. This shelf has a little bump out, and that makes it so I couldn't get another one of these in there. And that's why I just slide a couple of big things in here that aren't too hard to hassle with when I'm going to get this guy out. Big drawer is full of packages of meat that I have not opened yet. Now let me demonstrate for you why I love these bins so much. Because there is nothing better than being able to just slide it out easily. And even though I have the two bins in here stuffed together fairly tightly, they both slide out of there easily. And even better, I can take a whole bin out of here, take it over to the counter, and sort through it to find what I want instead of my head in the freezer. Okay, so let's give you the measurements of my freezer. Now, it's a Samsung, and before y'all go get judgy on me, these wacky shelves won't stay up here, so I MacGyvered putting this cardboard in here, don't tell the post office, to try to get it to stay more stable. Okay, but let's just talk in general here. I have 1, 2, 3, 4 shelves plus this bin on the bottom. Now, of course, you can arrange the height to your heart's content depending on your freezer. I don't have much options on my freezer, so this really pretty much is where they have to go. So I'm also going to give you the height, just so you can have a relative idea, the depth, and the width, and then we'll measure the bins. My freezer is about 12.5, 13 inches wide. And one thing I like about these skinny Dollar Tree tubs is they're a malleable plastic, so you can kind of squish them in there. But make sure you take into account any kind of bump outs like this on any particular shelves you might have. So the depth is roughly 15 inches from the back of the freezer to the edge of the shelf. And that's relatively true for all of these, except the bottom shelves are slightly longer, 18 inches. But then when you have to allow for things like the shelves to shut in front of it, you need a little space. You see what I mean? So take that into account when you're looking at your freezer. Height is approximately 9.5 inches. Yeah. On those upper three, and this lower one is more like 9. Let me pull out these bins and I'll give you the measurements. So now let's take a look at these bins. I have 2 of these taller bins in here, which I really prefer over this slightly shorter one. I already had this one before I got the idea of binning it up in my side-by-side. So then I went out and I got these specifically because you can get more food in there, right? And then this one I mentioned a moment ago, I got at the Dollar Tree specifically so I could get them in there side by side on the shelves. And then this one was on the top, kind of buried under this guy. And again, I had this one already. It didn't start out as I bought it for the freezer. It just ended up in there because, you know, I was trying not to spend money, trying to use what I had on hand. But this is my veggie bits and bites bin. If you've been following my channel, you've seen all of these before. But the veggie bits and bites bin fits on that upper shelf, and sometimes the suckers mound it up. But when I have it relatively low, I like that I can use this bin on top of it. I think this is Dollar Tree. So that when I pull things out to meal prep that I want to keep in the freezer until I'm actually ready to do the cooking with it, I can kind of lay them in here and then they sit stacked on that top shelf, and that's really handy. All right, so let's talk measurements. We'll just go left to right here. I'll do my best by you guys. This guy is 14 inches long by, let's call it 10 inches wide. This shorter bin that has my veggies in it is 12 inches long or deep, 8 inches wide by roughly 4 inches tall. Side bin along the big bin. I got these at Dollar Tree for $3 last year, you guys, and I'll let you know if I see any more. This guy is 15 inches long by 6 inches wide by roughly 6.5 inches tall. And of course, there's a little space left over on top because, like I showed you a bit ago, it's roughly 9 to 9.5 inches from shelf bottom to shelf top. So you can always, stack these bad boys up, which is another reason to go with bins if you've got a side-by-side, because you can get a lot more in there. So then this smaller main bin is what I think of it as. That is 13 inches long by 8 inches wide. You definitely don't want to go much wider than that if you want to get the side-by-side. But you could go, if you measure these straight across, right? Because you could just get one big bin, right? You could go as wide as 13 inches, depending on your freezer. But, just measure the width in your shelves before you go shopping and the depth. Don't forget to do that. It's really important. Again, mine's a Samsung. Yours might be a Whirlpool, so it matters. Now, this bigger bin that I prefer, that is 14 inches long by 8 inches wide. And that guy is basically 8 inches tall. So probably a lot more detail than most of you wanted, but wanted to share it for anyone who's thinking about organizing their freezer. All right, now that we've looked in that freezer, you've got a good idea of what I'm talking about when I mention bits and bites bins down the road. Let's get everything out on the counter and get to doing that meal planning. Now we're going to dive into these bits and bites bins and come up with a meal plan for the next week or so. Here's how I like to do my meal planning in general, but especially when I'm working with my bits and bites bins. I started by pulling my meats, then I pulled my veggies, then I have whatever I've got in my fridge I'll pull, and then lastly, the dry goods from the pantry. I like to do Sunday meal prepping. Today is Saturday. I'm filming, I'm planning, so most of the cooking is going to happen tomorrow and not in this video, but we're going to make a plan together. This is the bin that I pulled right before I left for the holidays. There's mostly veg in here, so I'm going to just kind of dump that out here and start from scratch, because I will put what I am pulling to make meals with in here so I'm organized. Let's start by talking about the meats bits and bites bin, which is right here. Now I did also pull out my whole meats bin, which I may or may not pull something from, but I'm going to start with this bad boy. And one thing I definitely have in mind is some pasta carbonara. And instead of going through every little thing here and pointing it all out, I'm just going to pull things out and then talk about what sounds good to me. Pardon the shuffle. I'm almost done. Okay. So pasta carbonara has bacon in it. And I have a lot of little tiny packages of already cooked bacon in here. I think maybe that's all. I think that'll be enough to get me going. This is turkey left over from Thanksgiving. Little breakfast sausage, Let's get those out for tomorrow morning. Little rotisserie chicken. That could go in the pasta. Raw bacon. Now these barbecue chickens, tomorrow is the last NFL football game before we get to the playoffs. So I think I will make one last pizza. Another thing, since we've got cold weather for Florida anyway, all week long, and I know you guys living up north in that polar vortex, oh man, my heart goes out to you. My twins are supposed to get up to 12 inches of snow this weekend. These are pre-cooked hamburger patties, and I think what I will make is some pasta fagioli soup. That just sounds so good to me. I think that's as much as I want to pull out of my meat spits and bites bin at the moment, because I also have that turkey breast that you probably saw a moment ago when we were looking in my side-by-side. And I would love to roast that up. Again, because it's colder, I like to have the oven on. I'm planning on baking some bread, which is raising right now. So let me get that turkey out. All right, this is a turkey breast that I got right after Thanksgiving on a crazy good sale at Aldi. This is a boneless turkey breast. It's 4 pounds, and I paid $5 for that. Boom. So I'm going to roast that up. And what I might do before I cook it is slice off several slim slices and do a kind of a turkey piccata with it, but with apricot sauce instead of lemon. Not this week. The slim slices I will throw in a baggie in the freezer. Maybe about a third of this turkey breast, and the rest of it I'm going to roast because I can use it in my salads all this coming week at work, plus maybe a sandwich. We'll see. I would like to get maybe one more entree going that's veggie heavy, because pasta carbonara, I'll make enough for 3 servings. The soup will be 3 or 4 servings, but then by the end of the week, I'll be wishing I had 2 or 3 more dinners because I like to cook once a week. I think I'd like to make a sheet pan. I threatened to do that before I left for Christmas, and I just did not have time to do it. And I ended up using that half a piece of smoked sausage in my black-eyed peas, which I've eaten almost all of. I made those. That was my only meal prepping for this past week, was New Year's Day black-eyed peas. It's going to take a long time just for me to eat through this bin and poke around in that meat spits and bites bin. Definitely, I say, probably be the end of February before both of these are empty. Now, some veggies to go with the various things here. For the sheet pan, I have a bunch of squash over here. These I grew in my garden. These looking a little worse for the wear. I don't know how delicious these are going to be. They may be too small to bother with. I'll attempt cutting those up and using those on the sheet pan. I may end up cutting up a second one. Also, some of those peppers I bought at Aldi. One. There's half an onion and one of these zucchinis, which I dropped on the floor and it broke open. So he needs to be used ASAP. All right. And I have a little frozen broccoli, so I'll throw that on there. I also have, let's hope they're still good, a few straggler fingerling potatoes that I had bought for Thanksgiving. Hopefully these are still good. I think so. And the pasta carbonara will allow me to use one of the boxes of spaghetti that I have in the cupboard. That's going to be for the pizza, the barbecue chicken. This little bit of sausage, I think what I'll do is make 4 or 5 breakfast bites. I don't want to go too crazy with the breakfast bites because eggs are so expensive and I only have about a dozen. For the pasta fagioli, I'll use the ground beef, this little bit of spinach that's been riding in there. This onion can go in the pasta, and I'll use a whole onion in my soup. Oh, I had 2 things of broccoli. Yay! One's going to go back in the veggie bits and bites bin for later. Now this I pulled prior to leaving for Christmas. Mediterranean veggies. It's basically onion and peppers. And it's been in my freezer for a long, long time. Can you tell? We'll see what kind of shape that's in when I open it up. That may or may not be usable, but assuming it is, I'll chop those up really, really small, and those will work in my soup. I pulled down my pasta basket, and this is the ditalini. Gosh, maybe I have 2/3 of a box there. So I'll probably only use maybe half a cup of that in my soup. I'm not trying to go pasta heavy since I am making a separate pasta dish. And then for my pasta carbonara, I have half a box of this really good quality spaghetti. Now for my sheet pan, I am going to cook all of these veggies here on one sheet pan, but I will probably do the squash on a separate pan depending on how much I get out of those, because I want to use the majority of the squash in my kale salads that I'll be making for work, which I'll use kale from my garden. I'll also use pecans, craisins, and some feta cheese in that, as well as some pepitas. Now, another thing that I need to use up are some of these cheeses in here. If you saw a prior video I put up early December, you saw me go through my cheese bin. So I'm not going to do that because I know exactly what's in here. But I need to use up some of this feta cheese. So I'll put that on my salad. And then I have a bag of soft mozzarella in here that I really need to use up before it goes bad. Even though it's never been opened, that expired the early part of December. I made a caprese pizza, gosh, 3 years ago, and that was delicious. So I think I will use probably close to all this on my football pizza that I'll make for tomorrow, as well as a ton of fresh basil out here, which is another motivation for making my caprese salad / pizza. And I have a ton of balsamic vinaigrette. So that's a good plan. I'll do half the pizza balsamic vinaigrette and the other half barbecue chicken, because that's just enough there for half a pizza. And let's have a little dig through the veggie bin here and see what else I've got that I could possibly toss in there. I've got a bunch of fresh herbs, thyme, yada yada, so definitely some of those. I don't think there's really anything else in there that necessarily goes in minestrone soup that I don't already have out. I'm going to be eating good, you guys. I really want to veggie it up because I have nothing here in the way of pastries or muffins, yada yada. Not that I need it, but I have all of this, right? And I am thinking either some banana bread or some pumpkin bread. And because I have a lot of bananas, I think I'll go for banana bread. I looked up a pasta fagioli recipe. I've decided to go with that instead of minestrone. And I am so excited because I actually have 1 can of Great Northern beans in my cupboard. I normally don't buy these. So, yay me. Let's see when those expire. Oh gosh, 2026. I'm way ahead of the game. Now, it also calls for a can of kidney beans. I don't buy canned kidney beans, but I did stockpile a bag of dry kidney beans, so I'll cook up about half of that bag. It also calls for tomato sauce, so I'll pull those. Because I mentioned it in my prior video, I want to use up one of these jellos this week. And I have 3 of these pistachios, so I think I will make some pistachio protein bites because I'm trying to up my protein. And I am going to pull a can of these diced tomatoes from my soup. And now I'm going to toss in this meal prepping basket, if you will, everything that I want to stay in the freezer until I'm ready to cook with it. Because I want to edit this video and get it up for you guys, because it is Saturday afternoon already. How does time go so fast? And then I will probably do some late evening meal prepping off camera. This is all going to go back in the freezer, everything that's frozen, except for the bananas because I want those to thaw out, and the turkey because I'm going to throw that in the oven when I start baking the bread. I once read a doctor said that it is best to mix up your proteins because that way you get the full spectrum of the BCAAs that come from meat proteins. So this week I'll be having ground beef, smoked sausage, turkey, bacon, plus a little breakfast sausage, dairy, and eggs. So that's a good mix. So that's my meal prepping from my Bits and Bites bin. I hope you all enjoyed it. Maybe got a few ideas, a little inspo along the way. I appreciate all of you tuning in, and I will see you in the next video.